Welcome to the In-Between-Man podcast, where men can be men. It's true. And I want to start off this week's episode by saying, please click on the link in my description. It's linktr.ee/thein-betweenman. It will give you access to all of my links. And the most important link that you can consider clicking on is a link to my private Discord server for men only. I want to build and grow a community of like-minded men who are understanding and can relate to the content that I'm currently sharing. So first and foremost, if you would consider doing that for me, it's free of charge. We can start a dialogue, and that's not a bad thing. Okay. The other thing is, going forward, if this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, the best way that you can consume my content, the In-Between-Man podcast content, is through chronological order. If you can start with the introduction to the In-Between-Men, going over the who, what, where, and how we're going to provide this content to the marketplace, that would be great. And then the last two episodes I have in a playlist titled The Traditional Male Value System. And what I did last week, which I thought was a lot of fun, was I just kind of went over the previous week's content. And I kind of like to do that here as well. So the traditional male value system, we asked and answered questions like, where did it come from? How did it evolve? How is it transformed over the years? What narratives have been shared? You know, this is a societal definition, right? And so these things happen over a long period of time. And from a traditional standpoint, for men, they haven't changed much, right? The traditional male value system is still the traditional male value system. The only difference is that we have a new, I don't like to use this term, but I'm going to use it here. We have a new woke, or let's call it an evolved and modern definition of what female gender roles are. So in the first episode, we talked about the where, how it all came from, you know, what cultures were a part of it, what modern narratives have changed, you know, the patriarchal breakdown of defining what attributes men have that would confirm their value. And then we also talked about some attributes that are used to define, you know, women today. And that is an old definition. We are now faced with a new definition, and we're going to discuss that. We also discussed about defining what the word traditional means and masculinities. And then we aligned the attributes, behaviors, and roles that came from out of those traditional masculinity definitions to the following areas that define what men are, which are being tough and resilient, rejection of some feminine behaviors, okay, dominance and leadership, and honor and responsibility. And I want to use those four going forward because I just think that they're easier to understand. And then what we did in the second episode is that, or in the previous episode, is we talked about some of the overlooked benefits that our new, evolved, and modern female gender roles have redefined for men. And how we embraced it or didn't embrace it or worked through it and things like that. So we went into a lot of definitions, and as a full circle reminder, some of the areas that the new, evolved, and modern female gender roles have challenged, okay, and questioned and criticized the traditional male values that we're all accustomed to today. And so here are a list of 6 of them. The new, modern, and evolved female gender roles have redefined and critiqued aspects of traditional masculinity. The current evolved and modern female gender roles have lost clear sight of what social roles are. So it's blurred the lines a little bit on what I do as a man versus what a woman does as a woman. The current evolved and modern female gender roles have alienated some men and even created identity crises, right, that have been exacerbated by mental health consequences, because men don't know what they need to do now because the script's been flipped on them. The social stigma and fear of expression. Like, I want you to talk about your feelings, and I want you to talk about them now, because that's the new modern and evolved approach towards everything. But men have been never taught how to do that. And you want us to do that how quickly, right? And what are the consequences of that happening? And then underpinning some of the merit-based hierarchies that we have out there. So in conclusion, we concluded that the woke or evolved in modern mentality has challenged men's sense of purpose and worth by critiquing traditional masculine roles and removing a clear social framework and stigmatizing masculine traits, leading to identity struggles and mental health challenges for many. And so in this episode, we're going to take another deep dive into some of the areas where there have been men's values, traditional values have been criticized, critiqued, stigmatized going forward, and how and when that actually transpired. So as we get into this episode now, 5 minutes into it, I am going to include 3 graphs, and I'll do it when I edit this. And the graphs are going to highlight the following. Let me just pull this thing up here. Okay. The graphs will highlight the So I think it's been about a decade since we've had these new evolved and modern female gender roles. So if we look back till 2015 and we confirm just between you and I that that was the start of these new definitions and changes, we can say that prior to 2015, women also had common traditional gender roles that we as men understood more clearly. You know what I mean? And because of that, that's comforting. You know, we have clear line of sight into what is right and what needs to be questioned. Okay. So we're going to start with the traditional values in 2015, and we're going to go down and break out the domestic roles for each man and woman, the economic participation for each man and woman, the gender norms associated for each man and woman, the social expectations for each man and woman, and the attitude towards feminism for each man and woman. Okay? And so what I'll do is I will embed this timestamp into the video, and then I will put this video on top of it and explain it to you. Okay? So in this video, or in this portion of the video, if you're watching it on YouTube, all right, there's a graph that highlights the traditional values before they were changed in 2015, which are traditional values for both men and women. So for women, their traditional values were being a primary homemaker or caregiver. That's what men thought they would be doing prior to 2015. And you can understand how comforting it is to know that that's going to be their role, especially if they want to do it. You know what I mean? Okay. So from an economic participation standpoint, men were the primary financial breadwinners. They were the providers. Okay. And up until that point, women kind of expected or were expected to even provide sort of a secondary earner, maybe some part-time work or additional support, you know, so they would add to whatever revenue or income the provider, in this case the man, would generate for the family, you know, for cars and mortgage and groceries and all that stuff, right? And so during that time, gender norms were that women were looked at more as a conforming and more of like a modesty kind of outlook, which again is traditional, right? This is what we've seen our parents go through, we've seen our grandparents go through, and we've learned this is, I'm saying we as men, we've learned that this is the norm that we should expect, right? Social expectations, the males' roles were the same: provider, financial support, right? Generating of, finances. And for the females, it was more like sacrificing for the family, right? Like your responsibility is to take care of the home, and this isn't a knock, right? This is just the reality of where we're at, and that you would consider doing that, and you would want to do that, and we would look forward to marrying you, knowing that you would want to do that, right? Because that meets an expectation that a man might have for a partner, okay? And then finally, attitudes towards feminism. They were mixed and contested. So I remember prior to 2015 that there were a lot of women speaking out about a lot of things that they didn't like from an equality standpoint. And some that come to mind that I remember hearing about is equal and fair pay. Women generally are paid less than men. Why? Because they're women. And that isn't a good answer. And for a long time, they had to accept that, right? For a really long time. I mean, as long as we've had our traditional male value systems, okay? So this is the slide that breaks down the traditional male and female values prior to 2015, which starting in 2015, we started to recognize and accept and understand the evolved and modern values that women sought after and wanted to be rewarded for, okay? So I'm going to switch the slide. You'll see now that the gray area has been moved over to the evolved values column, all right, with the same domestic economic participation roles, but with a different definition, okay? So in this new woke, evolved, modern world, domestic roles have changed. They've changed to where they've become more of a shared role, right? Like traditional roles, all my laundry's done, I don't worry about it. The sheets are clean, the house is clean, the kids are being picked up, right? Like those are things I don't have to worry about. Those have become shared domestic responsibilities, along with work responsibilities. Women, listen, guys, despite a lot of things, women are pretty fucking smart, okay? And they've endured a lot of oppression for a long time and have not been heard for a long time. And so I'm not surprised that these evolved and modern values have shown themselves now, right? Like, I don't know if it was time, but like it happened, and I'm not mad at that. I don't have a resentment towards that, but there are dynamics that we will go over that have impacted me in ways I never saw coming. And I think that's part of the reason why men are struggling today. Okay. So for the evolved and modern values under economic participation, there is a clear and concise pursuit of economic independence in the marketplace today. Women want to be career oriented. They don't necessarily want to be, just a secondary earner. They want to be a full-time earner and earn just as much, if not more, than a man. And they want independence. They want to break away from those traditional norms, saying that my primary worth is only tied to, taking care of the house and the homemaker kind of things. I want a career. I want to advance my career, and I'm going to do it. And there it is. Okay. And that's happened. From a modern and evolved value standpoint under gender norms, one of the changes from conformity to modesty is self-expression and equality, right? Women feel empowered to share their opinions on any matter, relating to men or not relating to men, and they want to be treated as an equal. And I understand that. And I completely get it. If you've been contested for such a long period of time, being treated as an equal is a positive thing. Okay? It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. And self-expression also, too. Go for it. Right? Like, I'm all for it. But there's challenges that we'll go over that happen to men during the acceptance of these modern and evolved values. All right. So from a social expectation, these evolved and modern values, compared to traditional norms, have the balance of self, family, and work. Kind of like what men did, right? Like, sometimes we worked so much that we never came home. And when we had time, we would go out and play golf and see the boys at the bar. And, the family kind of came second because my job and what I needed to do to take care of myself came first. And the balancing of that for women today has come to full fruition, And if they want to have economic independence and they see the benefits of a provider who has a balance, maybe in their favor towards how often and when they see their family, they would want those same qualities as well. And then the evolved and modern values, attitude towards feminism is more accepted and much more mainstream. So society as a whole has heard and agreed with these evolved and modern values and is implementing them into societal norms. Okay? Does that make sense? We talked about traditional, right? What was before 2015? We just talked about current, all right? And now we're going to talk about how those evolved and modern values have impacted men, challenged or overlooked aspects that men use to have self-worth and value and confidence as we grow and we do our job. So, impact to men. From a domestic role standpoint, one of the challenges is it blurred the lines of what is expected from each gender. Now, nobody ever asked me whether or not that was something I was happy to do. I just learned with my marriage that I was going to take responsibility for bathing. I was going to take responsibility for vacuuming and cleaning up on the weekends. I was going to take responsibility for, laundry and even grocery shopping, right? While at the same time, too, I had to mow the lawn and, keep the yard clean. And she didn't pick up any of those responsibilities, but I continued to do what was expected of me from a man. But it wasn't an easy time, you know what I mean? Like, I think we fought this a little bit. All right, so let's go to how the evolved and modern values today have impacted men with regards to economic participation. So men have become no longer uniquely responsible for a family's financial security. So when I would say, hey, I'm not going to be home tonight, I got a call that's going to make me late, I might get pushback like, well, my schedule's late too. But so-and-so's got to get picked up at, 6 o'clock at daycare. Who's going to pick them up? I'm running late too. Are you going to do that? Or does that fall on me? My job is just as important as yours. Okay. So now you're going to have to figure out a way to get out of what needs to happen right now and go pick up the kids, because I can't do it right now, but I'll do it for you next time. Like, what? I didn't ask for that. Right? Like, I'm not used to or expecting that answer. Right? So it impacted me and I had to course correct. Okay. Does any of this make sense? I hope it does. I hope this is painting a picture of maybe the last 5 to 10 years of how you've been managing your current relationship with a partner or just in general. All right. So let's get into how the evolved and modern values today have impacted men from a gender norms perspective. By the way, I'm going to give a little marker right here and let you know that I'm changing the slide so that it now highlights the impacted to men area. So we're going to be going through that slide now. Okay. So from a gender norms perspective, emotional openness and vulnerability are encouraged for all genders. So I grew up being told not to express my feelings, to stuff everything that had any. I grew up being told that I needed to be emotionally stoic, which means not show my feelings, not talk about my feelings, and not even consider them, to stuff them, hide them deep down under, and don't let them come out for any reason. Because if you do, you're a pussy and you're not a real man. Okay. But now we're being told it's okay to do that. All right. It's okay to share your feelings. And what women are probably looking at you saying is, hey, this isn't that hard. All right. I can do it. You can do it too. Let me help you. All you need to do is just talk about it. Okay. And just to get off on a tangent for a second, if you want to talk about biological differences, right? I believe, based on what I've learned, going to therapy with my ex-wife and understanding how women work, that they are pre-programmed to talk about their feelings in any capacity, talk about their feelings in any capacity, whether it be a friend, whether it be to a loved one. And the act, and let's call it art, of being able to share what you're upset about is one of the things that makes us absolutely crazy about dating women. But it is a process that over time we realize is acceptable for women. And they are able to talk about it and understand it and either work through whatever it is or ignore it, depending on how serious it is for them. Men have none of that. So when men hear from women, just be accountable and vulnerable. It's not going to be a big deal. You've got centuries of practice doing it. I just started 10 years ago. I just started 5 years ago. And if you want me to talk about stuff that I'm upset about, what about the stuff that I've jammed down to my core that I was told never to bring to light? What's going to happen if I go through the process of sharing with you my feelings about this one particular matter? Can I apply that logic to that same shit down below that's going to cause me anxiety and fuel drug addiction or alcoholism? Fuck that. That's what men are saying. I'm not doing it. And they go back to what they know, which is to not talk about it, because they haven't figured out a way that works for them to be able to communicate what it is they are feeling emotionally. We do not do that. And quite frankly, ladies, the quicker you recognize that we don't think like you, the better off men are going to be. Okay? Because it's not as simple as just doing it. Okay? You've been doing it and you've been taught how to do it your entire life. Men have not. These evolved and modern values have compelled men to look inwardly in a way where they feel less than, all right, and condemned for traditional male values, and now you're removing other ones or criticizing other ones to make us feel worse about how we feel already, and then you want us to talk about it? You out of your goddamn mind? Does it make sense now why men are maybe struggling mental health? Right? We men do not talk about their feelings until they are on fire or they consider putting a gun in their mouth and don't have enough courage to pull the trigger. There's a lot of people out there that do have a lot of courage to pull the trigger. And it kills me that that's a reality. Okay. All right. So let's get back to how the evolved and modern values today have affected social expectations. Difficult for men to find new models of masculinity, right? So another perfect example, 10 years ago, after work, if I was hanging out with my boys, we would roll into the bar, we'd get a couple cold ones, and if we were single, we would hit on girls, and we would ask them out. We might even slap their ass. We might even pull on their bra string as a way of flirting. And 10 years ago, or longer, that was accepted. It was not liked or appreciated, okay? And they just kind of wrote it off as it's just part of the deal. Doesn't mean that it's right, because it's not. But they were more sacrificing to that and to the notion of that, because that's what they knew. Where do men do that today? If you smacked a girl's ass or pulled it on a bra string in a bar with your buddies, you'd get bitch slapped and arrested. So help me understand, where do I go where I can do those things? And if I can't do them anymore, then what do I do with my time? I'll tell you what you do with your time. You play fucking video games in your house, in a room, by yourself. And what happens next? You get told you're spending more time on the fucking video game. Are you with me? Does this make sense? That's just one example of where new models of masculinity we're searching for. And we're not finding answers. Okay? And then last but not least, how the evolved and modern values, gender roles for females, has impacted the attitude towards feminism. And so how men are impacted today is there's a sense of alienation from among men who identify with the traditional male values. How could you not identify with the traditional male values? Okay, so I'm going to remove this slide. Maybe I've moved it a little bit farther, but I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out, because I've never heard anyone explain it to me in this capacity, right? I've never heard anyone sort of share, the timeline, like the turnaround time for change in these traditional male values has happened very quickly. And it's happened very quickly for a lot of good reasons, right? Women weren't being treated equal. They weren't getting the same amount of pay. They were looked at as sex model or sex symbols, all right, or whatnot, just for their looks, right? Like they were looking for some change, and you know what? They fucking found it. They found it, and good for you. I'm glad that you found it. And now, what we're going to dive into a little bit more is, if I can find it, how have the traditional female values changed and evolved over the course of the last decade? We just spent the first 30 minutes going over that by sharing with you that graph. Okay, so it may not be just 10 years, it may be longer, maybe 20 years. I don't know. All right, so don't quote me on the dates or whatever, okay? But we went over how these evolved and modern female gender norms have changed. And we just talked about how they impact men. Okay. So now, in conclusion, over the last decade, traditional female values have evolved toward greater equality, autonomy, and diversity of roles, especially among younger generations. Okay? And I would question whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, all these helicopter moms outside and kids having to feel, I don't feel like I need to go to school today. While significant progress has been made in attitudes and aspirations, actual practices and systemic barriers still lag behind, highlighting the need for continued advocacy and policy changes. Right? Okay. So the next question that we're going to ask is, how have the new evolved and modern female gender roles challenged and overlooked the traditional male values? Okay. We spoke about briefly on the slide I just shared with you. Now we're going to get into a little bit more detail. Okay. And just add more color to what I shared off the cuff just a few minutes ago. Okay. So, and again, I'll share my notes with you. I'll publish them to the web, and I'll include them in the description of this YouTube video. And then at the same time, I'll also include the graphs as well. So modern female gender roles have significantly challenged and in some respects overlooked traditional male values over the last decade by reshaping expectations for both men and women in society. Okay? So I think part of what I should just mention before we even get started is I think that men never believed that their traditional male value roles would ever change. Okay? Why would they? I mean, we're talking centuries. These have been the way that they've been for centuries and generations. So why would we ever think that, and who would change them, right? And then, boom, it happens. And so I want to preface that I don't necessarily see this as a willing attempt to prevent progress for men. I think that this was an unwilling set of circumstances or unknowing set of circumstances that once the norms that allowed women to evolve in new modern gender roles impacted how men feel. And I don't think they ever believed that it would impact men the way that it has today, right? But I'm telling you, it has. It has. It's had a dramatic impact on how men value themselves individually and in society. Okay, so we're going to talk about that a little bit more. I say that to you because I don't think this is an assault. It may feel like an assault with all these changes, and there may be some examples of women out there that want to drive this down your fucking throat. And if that's the case, that's probably one of the few that want to do that. But I think the majority is concerned about men because I don't think they understand what's really happened. And if they do, they don't know how to change it, or they don't know how to meet us halfway. And we don't know what to tell them. So it's a dynamic, troubling one. All right. So again, getting into more detail of the impact these have had on these modern and evolved female gender roles have had on men. So the redefinition of provider and protector roles have been redefined. As women have gained economic independence and entered the workforce in large numbers, the traditional male role as sole provider and protector has been eroded. Men are no longer uniquely responsible for financial security, and this has blurred the lines of what is expected in each gender role. Can you see how that would be confusing? To be told one day that the woman you married, who was excited about having kids and staying home and taking care of them, now wants to go get her master's degree in biology? And that, I mean, I can see that, but like, you'd be stunned. You'd be like, what? It's not what I thought you were going to do, right? That's not the expectation. And what happened? What's the problem with expectation? Is that I always get disappointed with whatever expectation I have, right? So now it becomes a personal battle, an assault on each other that ends in fucking chaos, okay? So if a man is no longer valued as much as being the sole financial provider to a wife and family, how does this change impact my value as being a man? It changes it. How? It depends on you. The expectation for men to always be strong, stoic, and responsible are now being questioned, with emotional openness and vulnerability encouraged for all genders. And we just talked about, the fact that we should be emotionally open and more vulnerable now on the flick of a switch is not going to happen overnight. And it hasn't happened overnight. And you can see the data is there to prove it. Okay. So the emphasis on emotional intelligence and shared responsibility. Modern gender roles promote emotional intelligence, communication, and caregiving as valuable for everyone, not just women. Men are now encouraged to participate in more domestic life and parenting challenges. The notion that nurturing, this now challenges that the notion of nurturing is exclusively a female trait. So because I work from home and because I was, primary financial support, that didn't mean that I didn't have to carry in the groceries when my wife went shopping. That didn't mean if my wife was out running an errand and my son needed to pick up at Joey's house that I didn't go get him. I did. That didn't mean that after dinner, when I came in from work, that all the kids had to be bathed and I had to bathe either one or two of them all at the same time and read them a story and put them to sleep. Those are all things I enjoy doing. But if I was a man of traditional values, I would say, I'm watching the news, you go do that. It's not the way the world works anymore, okay? I believe that we begrudgingly accepted those changes because they were easier. They were easier to do. This shift can leave men feeling that their traditional strengths, such as resilience, assertiveness, and leadership, are undervalued or even criticized as outdated and problematic. Now, again, there are some women out there that will reinforce the fact that what is accepted today is no longer being what used to be accepted 10 years ago from a traditional male value standpoint is no longer being accepted, and they've weaponized it in the form of emotional abuse and condescending behavior. Have you ever heard, has your wife or ever significant other said to you, be a man? That to me, when I'm in a fight, is the single worst thing that you could say to someone like a man? Be a man. Fucking be a man and go do it. That one stings. All right. So questioning and deconstructing gender norms. The move towards gender equality has led to broader questioning of all traditional gender roles, just not those for women. Stereotypes that once dictated men must avoid vulnerability or emotional expression are now seen as restrictive and potentially harmful. Yeah, get used to that. We've already gone over how that affects men emotionally. Some critics argue that as society encourages men to be less aggressive and more emotionally open, it can create confusion and an identity crisis for men who feel their historic values are no longer clear or even respected. But what I can tell you from my own experience is that I know I can still have some of those traits of being a man, you know, where I can put my foot down, or I can, you know, have an opinion about something and really make it matter, be heard, hopefully. All right. And this is another one that's tough. Undervaluing traditional masculine traits. In some narratives, traditional masculine traits like strength, leadership, and assertiveness are portrayed as less relevant or even a negative, rather than being reimagined in a positive, modern context. Okay, you hear that? So we've been told that these things are negative now, which prior to 2015 or whenever it started, we knew were, and we've been told that they're bad. So now we're being told that we're bad, right? Which can lead to loss or alienation among men who identify with those traditional male values. So can you see why men are struggling today? Does it bite more? Like, not only do I not feel like a man, not only am I being told that I'm not a financial provider, not only is my assertiveness and my dominance not being respected, but it's now it's a detriment to me. So get rid of it now. Remove all that shit out of your DNA. And I'm telling you, you don't need to, in my opinion. In my opinion, we can help rewrite and recreate a narrative that brings and allows us to create modern content and evolved in modern values for men also. We're gonna do that. That's what's happening. The rapid change in gender expectations can make it difficult for men to find new models of masculinity that feel meaningful, contributing, and what some call a crisis of masculinity. And I wholeheartedly agree. There is a crisis. The lack of new positive masculinity models. While there is a growing encouragement for men to embrace new roles, there are often less focus on developing positive, modern expressions of traditional male values, such as responsible leadership, resilience, and protection within the new gender paradigm. So no one's going to rewrite this for us, guys. We got to do it. Men may feel that the traits that once defined their sense of purpose are now either ignored or criticized, rather than adopted and celebrated in new ways. And let me just point out, I'm not angry at the fact that these new values, modern, elevated, and modern female gender role values, didn't consider bringing positive changes to how men can feel. They didn't ask us whether or not we were okay with it. They just did it. And what I'm saying to you is I'm okay with that. Like, I don't feel like in the course of change, like we're talking about here for females, that they need to be concerned about how it impacted us. But you can see now how it has. We got 10 years of data backing it up. Higher suicide rates. The list goes on and on and on. Social expectations remain contradictory. Despite the push for change, society still often expects men to be strong, independent, but also emotionally available and less dominant. These mixed messages can be confusing and leave men feeling unsupported as they navigate evolving expectations. What did I say about expectations? I'm always disappointed, okay? I am committed to collaborate with anyone who's willing to collaborate, a community of like-minded people to rewrite the narrative of what new male traditional role models are, to coincide with the evolved and modern new female gender roles. Right now, we don't have any. And this isn't going to happen overnight. So in conclusion, modern female gender roles have challenged traditional male values by promoting equality, emotional openness, and shared responsibility. But this shift has sometimes overlooked the need to positively redefine and integrate traditional masculine strengths. Thank you. The result is a landscape where both men and women are encouraged to transcend old stereotypes, but where men, in particular, may struggle to find clear, valued roles in rapidly changing society. Bang! There it is. There it is. There it is, in my opinion. You may not agree, but that's all I got. What am I going on? All right, 47 minutes. I'm gonna cut this short. So please check us out. Subscribe to our Discord, private male-only Discord channel. You can get the link at linktr.ee/thein-betweenman, and you can join our community in that capacity. And more importantly, because this is such a big deal, I'm going to ask that you just don't share it with anybody. Keep it to yourself. Don't join my YouTube channel. Don't like the video. Don't share it with anybody. And just keep it all between yourself, and everything will be great. Because that's how men do. That's how men deal with emotional dynamics right now. Don't like, don't subscribe, don't join, don't communicate, don't collaborate. Just sit at home and play video games, which by the way, I did for 3 years. So I'm saying it because I know it. And it's exciting. For me it is. I hope it is for you too. So don't forget the In-Between Man podcast, where men can be men. And I'll see you in there. See you on the next one.